All right, welcome to a new episode of the Opening Bid Unfiltered podcast. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sozzi. I'm continuing a little bit of a detox from talking about all things stocks and NVIDIA and OpenAI because I just need to do it. There's more going on in the world besides all things tech. And I have a bit of a surprising guest here at NASDAQ in Times Square with me. That is Patrick McEnroe. Good to see you.
It's good to detox from, yes, this is a perfect way for you to detox. Yeah, because I know nothing about your world, and I'll try to educate you just a little bit about my world.
Well, that's funny you said that because I spent the day yesterday warming up my voice. Of course, you're a commentator on ESPN for a long time. Yep. Who is the real you? I have grown up watching you on ESPN, especially around the U.S. Open. Love going to that event. I did not catch your playing career.
You didn't miss much.
No, come on, you reached 28. Like, who are you? Like, how should I intro you?
That's a very good question. You know, I've managed to be able to play a lot of different roles post-playing career. You know, I played until I was about 30. I had a shoulder surgery that put me out of commission. I actually just had another one about 3 months ago because too much wear and tear. But anyway, that kind of opened some opportunities for me in the broadcast world. At ESPN almost 30 years ago now. So I've sort of parlayed that and been able to do that for my whole career, and then I've been able to work with the USTA as the head of player development for a bunch of years, be the Davis Cup captain for the US for 10 years, the Olympic coach, and then now work with my brother at his tennis academy, the John McEnroe Tennis Academy, be part of the International Tennis Hall of Fame as the president. So I've sort of been lucky to work in a lot of different roles, but all kind of surrounding tennis. And then I also do my own radio show on Sirius XM. That's a little bit of tennis, a little bit of all sport. So it keeps me fairly busy, but all in the world that I really love, which is tennis. I started out as a kid just doing what my two older brothers did. I have another brother, Mark, who became a successful attorney. So he wasn't a professional tennis player like John and myself, but tennis was just part of how we grew up. And we were able to parlay that into a pretty good career post-playing for both me and my brother John.
Grew up in Long Island, right? Me too.
Well, I have to say Queens.
Queens,
but
okay.
It was sort of more like Long Island-ish, if you love where Douglaston is. It's right, Douglaston, Queens is right on the border of where my wife always gives me crap because she says, you're really from Long Island, because my wife's from Long Island. We met at school, actually, at grade school in Long Island, Buckley Country Day School.
Wow.
But anyway, we lived in Douglaston, Queens. And my parents had started out, you know, with nothing, and my dad was an attorney, working during the day, going to law school at night. I mean, I wasn't an attorney yet. My mom was an emergency room nurse, and they got married quite young. And when they moved to this kind of nicer part of Queens called Douglas Manor, there was a tennis club there. And they went to my brother John, who was 8 or 9 at the time, and said, you could either try swimming, they have a swimming pool, or you could try tennis. Tried swimming for like a week, said I hate it. He was a great athlete, who's already played soccer, baseball, basketball. So he tried tennis, and the rest was history.
How is it, I'm sure you've gotten asked this question like 5 trillion times, but like, what was it like competing in those early days with your brother? I mean, you're back there, you're practicing.
Well, it wasn't until I got to be about 16, 17 that we could actually play even with each other, because he's 7.5 years older than me, which he likes to remind me of quite a bit. So when I was a little kid, you know, I would just literally tag along with both my brothers, you know, playing soccer, playing basketball, football, and tennis. You know, people say, well, why did you choose tennis over the other sports? Because we did play all sports, played on our teams at school and so on. Well, we just happened to be better at tennis than we were in the other sport. My brother was a great athlete, a great soccer player. I was a decent athlete in other sports, but I happened to have a pretty good skill at tennis. So we stuck with tennis, and it helped us get into college, which was at Stanford University, which had a great academic history and also a great tennis history. And our parents, you know, always stressed with us academics first, and then, you know, use the tennis to help you out there.
I speak to a lot of CEOs that lead public companies. They're titans of industry, and in their head, they all think they're athletes or want to be athletes. What did a prep day look like for you when you were competing for an event?
There was a lot of hours. I mean, I actually remember living in the city, and I'd be preparing to go to the Australian Open, which I'll be going to next week. So if I was a player, I'd already be there because the warm-up tournaments are just getting underway in the early part of January. I remember going to play, going to practice. There's a bubble of courts right under the 59th Street Bridge, which in the summertime become like an outdoor, like where they play softball and stuff, and they're red clay, which is highly unusual to have in New York City. And I would go there at 6 in the morning, and I would train from 6 to 8 in the morning. I had a guy that would, drill me, play with me, and I could get a court early before, people that actually paid to come and play. So I'd usually do that for a couple hours. I'd go home, I'd rest, I'd come back, train again for another 2-3 hours, and then do your gym or do your fitness. And now it's become one of the reasons why you're seeing these all-time great players being able to play so long is they've used technology. They've used
like the stupid strap, this
well,
whoop strap.
Yeah, you got
tracking
that.
my life.
Yeah, tracking your life. Yeah, you can't even have a drink.
Yeah, no, I can't actually.
Right,
no,
right,
I can't. It throws off all the stats.
It was when you're doing it, you're pretty tunnel vision, but it's also sort of it's kind of an easy life in that you're very focused on what you have to do physically, and then because if you don't do that, you have no chance. And then when I transitioned out of playing full time, that's a transition I think for all athletes when you go into, okay, what am I going to do next?
How hard was that?
It was tough in the beginning, and actually my wife said to me, you got to get off the couch. What are you doing? You're just watching TV all day. And then it helped me to get into the TV business fairly early when I got out when I finished playing, so I was quite lucky. But it is something, especially for tennis players, when you travel so much, it's 9-10 months, you're on the road all year. You don't really have a settled home life. Even if you're an athlete in a team sport, if you play on the New York Knicks, you live in New York, you have a family, you travel a bit, but you're kind of based. And as a tennis player, you're sort of like a nomad. So that takes some, you have to change your mindset a little bit to where, okay, wait a second, I gotta find a life here where I live, full time. Because when you're on the road playing tennis, you're just constantly going.
How did you manage the mental side of playing tennis? From a viewer standpoint, I see the players, they're passionate on the court, but I always hear about the negative self-talk that you hear players going through. How'd you deal with that?
Tennis is tough because you're on your own, and it's a very isolating type of environment when you're out there and you're playing against an opponent and you've got the crowd there, and so there's the pressure of just trying to win the match, but there's also the pressure, as you intimated, you kind of define yourself in some ways about how well you're doing as a tennis player, and that's dangerous at times. So you have to, I used to try to find other things to work on in my life, whether it was physical things, I want to lift 1 more pound or 1 more weight, or I want to get a little exponentially quicker if I can, because the wins and losses are going to happen no matter what. Mostly you're going to lose a lot. I tell parents all the time at our tennis academy, I said, they consider me that I was a pretty successful player. When I played, I made it to the pros, like you said. Thank you for knowing I got to number 28 in the world. Yeah,
I did my research here. From one commentator to the next.
Exactly.
No, I don't even use this stuff.
Yeah, no. But anyway, what I tell them is that I played pretty successfully for about 10 years on the tour. And you know how many times I walked away from the tournament not having lost once? I won 1 title in my career. I won more titles in doubles. Point being is that you have to get accustomed to losing, and then you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, okay, what can I do to still feel good about myself, still try to improve myself, and try to I knew that when I played Andre Agassi, for example, he was going to kick my ass. No matter what I did, it didn't matter, because there's certain levels with the players that are the best in the world. I was very good, but I wasn't at that level. So you have to that's can be a hard pill to swallow if you have dreams as a kid, like, hey, maybe I'll win the U.S. Open like my brother did, or maybe I'll be able to do that. And when the reality sets in that that's not going to happen, you have to be content with, okay, how can I be the best I can be as an individual, as a player, as a person, and that's sort of what drove me over my career.
How do you see kids today handling loss differently than when you were coming up?
I think there's more pressure now because there's more, the kids are focusing more on their particular sport, and that's in some ways, it's good for business at our academy. Kids come 5-6 days a week. Sure. But when I was a kid and when my brother was a kid, we only played tennis on the weekends. When I tell parents this now, they can't even believe it. that literally during this time of year or the fall, we would play soccer on our school team, and then we would play tennis every weekend. And now kids, whether it's not just tennis, whether it's lacrosse, soccer, travel soccer, kids get into hockey. We have friends of ours that kids play hockey, and it becomes all encompassing. So I always try to, tell the parents as the kids start, the online school is now more popular, homeschooling, so that kids can spend more time playing. I said, if that's really what the kid wants to do, and they're passionate about it, it can work. But if the kid isn't passionate about it, and we can usually see the ones aren't, at our academy that are sort of being pushed into it, generally speaking, by the time they turn, 14, 15, they'll quit. And that's not, I don't think that's good for anyone. So I think if you have the balance right, most of our kids that end up, that are the best kids at our tennis academy, best playing wise, usually are pretty good students. They're pretty, they manage themselves well, and they end up playing tennis in college and going to great universities, and then realizing they're not going to be a professional tennis player, but tennis is a way for them to get into your world, into the business world. And I think that's something that we try to highlight that for the parents and for the kids as they get older.
I think you just called me a generational talent.
There is that.
But really, if you look at over the past 15 years in tennis, you have, of course, Serena.
Yeah.
You have Venus, too. Sinner.
Who Venus, by the way, is going to play.
She's going to play
Australian.
I mean,
yeah, amazing. 45.
She's not that far away from me in age. Like, oh my God, Venus, you're amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah.
These are generational talents. Is there a next crop of folks like this coming?
Well, we've got.
You can't tell.
We can tell a little bit. We were all worried in the tennis world when Serena, moved on, when Federer moved on, Nadal, and now you've still got Djokovic, who's still there. He's arguably the greatest of all time. Yeah. But now you've got Sinner and Alcaraz, which these guys, we knew when they were 17, 18, they were going to be great players, but we didn't know they were going to be this good, this fast. And arguably, they're even more dominant now, early in their 20s than even the big three were, or certainly earlier in their career. So they've raised the bar to a whole nother level, these two.
Alcaraz's body looks different the past 2 years. He is.
Well, they both have gotten a lot stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is what I was, talking about a little bit earlier, is just the awareness and the knowledge of how to improve yourself through diet, through recovery. Recovery is probably the biggest difference now, to how the players recover post-match, post-workout, all the flexibility stuff they do, and the diet and the supplements and all
Cold
that
plunge.
That too, right? So I think it's really, what's interesting to me as I get ready to go to Australia for the first major of the year is, the question is who can step up and really legitimately threaten Sinner and Alcaraz? Is it Ben Shelton? Is it Taylor Fritz, a couple of our top-ranked Americans? Is it someone else? Is it João Fonseca, the young kid from Brazil? So there's some potential players out there, but I actually think tennis needs someone else to sort of step up, because these two they've won the last 8 majors in a row over the last 2 years. All
right, hang with us, Patrick. We're going to go off for a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid Unfiltered at the NASDAQ in Times Square, on a fun chat here with Patrick McEnroe. I want to leave a block for Djokovic. Now, this is someone who I followed as much as I can. I try to watch tennis as much as I could. I love the sport. Has he given up competing with the big two now? Or trying to catch up to them, maybe?
I don't think he's trying to catch up to them. I think he's trying to just kind of hang around and see if maybe it gets a little bit lucky in a major, and not that he needs luck, but I think he loves to compete. He loves to play. He likes the lifestyle. He likes the fact that, he's legitimately the third best player in the world. But I don't care if the rankings have him at 5 or 6. He plays a minimal schedule, doesn't play as often as he used to. But I think he loves just the challenge of it. I do scratch my head a little bit that he's continuing to play, because I think it's possible he can win another major, but I don't think he will.
Does everything have to go right?
One or two things have to go right, meaning he's probably going to have to hope that one of those guys gets upset by someone else, and that maybe he could beat one of them. I don't think he could beat both back to back. I actually don't even think he could beat one, but it's a tennis match, so it can happen. He's Novak Djokovic. He's played them fairly close in 2 out of 3 sets, but in best of 5 he tends to, get fatigued as the match goes on. But I think he just loves the fact that he's the guy. He's still standing. Roger's long gone, Rafa's long gone, not long gone, but within the last few years, they've gone off into retirement, and he's still out there, competing and playing very well. I mean, he's beating everybody else on the planet except for those 2 guys.
A lot has been made about his diet, but as someone that has seen him up close and personal, is there other things he does to stay at the top of his game?
He's relentless. I mean, the amount of off-court work he does, his flexibility still is remarkable. I remember when I was a Davis Cup captain, and he was just sort of coming up. He was a legit number 3 in the world. He was still not quite there with Nadal and Federer. And we went and played U.S. against Serbia in Belgrade. This was probably in mid-2000s. And he was already a superhero in his country. He had one major, one Australian Open. And but there was so much pressure on him from the public. And I went to many places, many other countries as a Davis Cup captain, France, Spain, Colombia, and most of the places you go, they really want to beat the USA, but they're having fun. The crowds. This crowd in Serbia, they were pissed off, and they were pissed off at us as Americans, for the political history there, but they were also, you could feel the tension towards Djokovic. In other words, like, you better not lose to these Americans. You better win. And he was supposed to win, and he did win. And not only was he sort of the host of the whole event, and he handled himself incredibly well, like, welcoming us. You have these dinners with both teams and the administrators of both sides of the globe. And he was able to kind of deal with that pressure. And so I learned a lot about him watching that. I learned what he was up against dealing with in his own country, coming from a war-torn country, leaving as a teenager to go to Germany to train, and just kind of feeling the vibe of what the kind of pressure he was under. So not only did he do everything he can on the court, but I love what he said over the years. People said, well, you're so mentally tough. And he said, well, I had to train myself to do that. Train his mind, train his brain. And I think he's kind of taken all of that to another level, not just the diet and the flexibility, but also like the willingness to just say, like, I need to get better as a competitor. And a lot of times as a tennis player, you think this guy's just mentally tough and it's not something you can really train. But I think we're learning over the years that you can train the brain in ways that maybe you didn't think you could as well. And I think he's ticked every box when it comes to doing all he can, and that's why in his late 30s he's still competitive and still seems driven to want to go out there and compete.
What did you think when you saw that news, maybe about a month ago, the chatter online about Serena coming back?
I was surprised. I was very surprised. I did quite a few interviews about it. I think she was blindsided that it came out because, if you're even thinking about coming back to professional tennis, you have to go through 6 months of drug testing, of being in the system of the protocols, which means that they could come to your door at any time and drug test you, whether take a urine sample or take a blood sample as well. So you could be on vacation, as many tennis players are in December in the Maldives, and if they show up at your hotel, you have to let them know where you're going.
Wow.
They can show up and take a test. So I think that Serena maybe didn't know that was going to come out because she apparently put her name into the system in October, which would mean that the 6 months would go by, so probably around mid-April, she'd be eligible to play again if she wanted. I think she was just putting it out there to have that option, maybe come back play with her sister. We at the Tennis Hall of Fame up in Newport, we don't want to pressure Venus or Serena, but we know their Venus is going to be in the Hall of Fame. We keep like, is she going to retire? She's playing like 1 or 2 tournaments a year.
She played well.
She played pretty well at the U.S. Open, but I mean, not the level where she played when she was winning 7 majors. So I don't know. I was thinking to myself, maybe they just want to play one more U.S. Open in doubles and both retire at the same time. So we at the Hall of Fame would be fine with that.
So you say you view Serena as done. She's done. She's retired.
She's done, but as we're seeing with athletes, what about Philip Rivers? Just came back.
I know, isn't it
retirement in his at 44, 45 as a grandfather. And
but is it hard to pull that off?
It's pretty much
tennis,
impossible
or is it the
to pull
same?
it.
It's the
No,
same.
it's pretty much. I mean, it's extremely hard. Yeah, I would say it's harder than it is in football. Now that's hard. You're going to get your butt kicked. Yeah. But from a physical standpoint, and you can come in as a quarterback or as a in another sport, let's say as a pitcher, and you have a lot of help. You still have to perform, but as a tennis player, you have no help.
Yeah, I saw Roger Clemens pitch, I think, one batter at a Savannah Bananas game. And he looked
really?
good. He looked good. I'm like,
sure he can still
he's
throw
almost
it.
60.
Yeah.
I'm like, sign me
Yeah.
up to some Roger Clemens on the Yankees again. The female game. Who should we be looking out for? Of course, Sabalenka.
Sabalenka's been incredible. Yeah.
What a serve, a true powerhouse. Who is nipping at her heels?
Well, Coco Gauff is right there. There's 4 American women in the top 10 right now. There's Coco Gauff, Jess Pegula, who's a veteran, who's been kind of knocking on the door, hasn't been able to break through and win one. She did get to the U.S. Open final, losing to Sabalenka year before last. Coco's won 2 majors now, U.S. Open and then at Roland Garros, where she beat Sabalenka in the final. I like Amanda Anisimova, who got to the final of Wimbledon and suffered one of the worst defeats you can ever possibly have. The worst thing that can happen in tennis is you lose 0-0. You call it the double bagel, or a triple bagel in men's if it's the best of 5. And that's happened only a couple of times in the history of the sport. And this happened to her in the Wimbledon final in front of the entire world against Iga Swiatek. And we were all watching it, and as tennis players, we kind of see it coming. When she loses 6-0, and then it's 1-0, and then you see her kind of freeze up, and you're like, oh no, like this could be 0-0, and that happened, on center court. That's the match that most people who are sort of non-tennis fans watch is the Wimbledon final. Yep. If you're sitting and watch one match a year, it's going to be the Wimbledon final. So we all really felt for her, just as ex-players, and knowing what that means. And she came back and beat Swiatek at the U.S. Open. Gets back to the final again, and ends up losing to Sabalenka. And I just really love her story. She left the game for a while as a teenager. Her dad passed away unexpectedly. She had to deal with that. She had to deal with kind of what you asked me early on, with like the negativity, and not really wanting to be out there, not really wanting to be part of the wins and losses. So she took a break. She actually went back to school and did some things outside of tennis. So she came back sort of with a different perspective, and I really like her game. She's a power hitter, similar to Sabalenka. You've got Swiatek, who's right there. You've got Rybakina. The women's game is interesting because you've got a bunch of really, really great players, but it's not like the men's game where they're just utterly dominant, the way the top 2 are. So there's a little more of a spread, a little more of a mix. You can see a woman maybe ranked outside the top 15 or 20 get to a major final. That's, at the moment, pretty unlikely that's going to happen in the men's game. So I think the women's game has got a nice mix of, Swiatek's won 5 or 6 majors now. Sabalenka's won, I think it's 4. Coco's won 2. And there's some, real talent spread out pretty evenly across the women's game.
So I'm as a tennis watcher on TV, I'm watching sometimes, and players go on these streaks, or you see big momentum shifts. Like, what is the cause for that? Is it the crowd? Is it the self-talk? Like, what is the trigger? I'm watching tennis, and this player's crushing it. I mean, they're winning, and then all of a sudden it turns on a dime. Like, what's the cause of that?
Well, usually that's a match where the players are fairly evenly matched. So someone can get hot. Sometimes a crowd can be part of it. There's very few points that separate a great player from a really good. I say this to our kids. I ask my kids. I'll ask you. What percentage of points do you think, say, Novak Djokovic, when he's number 1 in the world, what percentage of points do you think he wins over the course of the entire year? Go on, you're a numbers guy, so what do you think it is?
25?
No, what percentage of points out of 100% does he win over the course of a year?
Probably 10%.
So he wins 54% of the points played the whole year. Wow. So my point is that he's losing 46% of the points. So the difference between winning, when you win 6-4, 7-5, for example, the person who's winning is likely winning about 6 to 7 points more a match, which is not that many.
Sure.
It's not that many. But it's the decisive points. In tennis, the scoring system is so brilliant. It's set up in a way that, the 30 all point is sort of a more predictable of who's going to win it if you win that point more often rather than a 40 love point, for example. So it's kind of brilliant in the way the game is structured. So these streaks can happen just because you just get on a little bit of a roll. If you do have the crowd behind you, that can help. But sometimes it's just, the law of averages. Usually it will even out over the course of the match, but it's who wins those crucial points that's probably going to end up winning the match.
Lastly, just randomly, how do you manage your portfolio? No, I had to get it in. No, you had to get that in.
I was telling you before we came on that I actually did a mock interview with my daughter who's in college, who's going up for a big interview with one of the big financial firms, and she's a sophomore in college. And I have I have a good financial advisor, who manages my money for me. And my wife, who's a singer and an actress, has no background in finance. And our daughter's like killing it. She's like, I'm doing this interview.
Cool.
I went to ChatGPT. I said, give me questions to ask my daughter. And I was like, man, she really knows her stuff.
The best insight I can give you is buy what you know. Nike sneakers. Acer, I think, owns Wilson, and they make tennis rackets.
You could tell me this, though, because I noticed this. I went in to return something from Christmas holiday for one of my daughters at Lululemon.
Oh, God. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on Lululemon.
And I'm looking at all the stuff they're selling, and they have tennis players now wearing Lululemon.
Yes.
The other one is Viore, I think it's called.
Oh.
So are those companies going to put Nike and Adidas out of business?
I have so much to send you offline. Long story short, Lululemon is now being attacked by an activist investor, which is what you don't want.
Okay.
Their product assortment has gone absolutely awful.
Okay.
The stock fell 55% last
so
year.
So Nike shouldn't
We're going to take it
wear
offline because I'm going to keep going. It's like my version of it's like tennis. It's like tennis.
I hit a button with
You did.
Yeah,
Patrick, thanks for doing this.
Thanks
it was
for
a real
having
treat
me.
to meet you. I'm a big fan of your work. I
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid Unfiltered here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. We'll talk to you soon.